Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and do a little bit of a comparison, a pretty thorough one, between the iPad 11th generation that just came out and the iPad 9th generation that's been out for a little bit of time now. Now, number one, the biggest thing I can probably tell you is that if you're in the market and you're trying to go through and pick up some sort of an iPad, it definitely would make a lot of sense to go ahead and buy the latest and greatest generation. So go through, buy the iPad 11th generation. That one's a really good iPad. It has a lot of capability, and that is the one that's going to be a way better iPad for sure. But at the same time, if you're able to buy an iPad 9 and that's better than the current iPad you have, then go for it. But I definitely do think an iPad 9th generation would probably end up being the better one for a price tag standpoint. But even then, I find that kind of hard to believe because the iPad 11 is like $349, which really isn't that much money in the grand scheme of things. So there's a lot of things to discuss here. First of all, if you want to pick up either one of these iPads, links will be down in the description below. So you can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these iPads, the iPad 9th generation that came out back in 2021, on the front side of this iPad is giving you a 10.2-inch Retina display. So it's an IPS panel. There's not really anything super insane or super crazy going on with it. It's a pretty basic type of panel, honestly, when it does kind of come down to it. So if you're looking for a better type of panel, then there are better options out there. But I would probably tell you, in my personal opinion, if you're going to go through and pick up an iPad, this one is good for the most part. You're getting a pretty big bezel at the top and the bottom compared to today's standards. So that could be a pretty big turnoff on who you are. So like I said, if that is something that could be concerning to you, then there might be better iPads out there. But this thing is giving you the home button at the top or the bottom, which isn't too big of a deal, but like I said, it can be kind of annoying depending on who you are. On the iPad 11, this one is giving you an 11-inch display. So this type of panel and this type of display is actually very, very good. It's a very good looking display for the most part, and it is a better display than the iPad 9. So with this iPad, it's giving you a liquid retina display. It's giving you, the True Tone technology on it too. Like, they have the same features on the front. They're both 60 Hertz, but the iPad 11 just looks better because that one is giving you kind of way less bezel on it. So that is kind of an advantage on that type of iPad. So if you're going to go through and like pick up an iPad, it does make a lot of sense to go and kind of look at an iPad like that, because that is kind of giving you a little bit more of capability and a little bit more of an advantage when it comes down to it too. So kind of keep that in mind. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but that could be just one other thing you might end up seeing when it comes down to the front side. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here is that with the iPad 9th generation, you're basically getting a lightning port inside of that iPad. So it just depends on like which iPad you would prefer. With the iPad 11 gen, you are getting USB Type-C. So that is kind of an advantage there. I do think if you're going to go through and pick up an iPad, it is actually nice to be able to buy something that has USB Type-C. That might be an advantage there, but that is for sure an advantage there. But Lightning is still okay for the most part too, and it's not really like that big of a deal either. The iPad 11 is giving you a better design because it does give you flat sides all throughout. So that is kind of an advantage, but the 9th generation iPad still looks pretty good for the most part too. Like I said, it's not that big of a deal. On the backside, you're getting single camera setups on both these iPads. So that could be one other thing to keep in mind here too. They're both giving you, the solid back on the backside, aluminum. So nothing super crazy here. It's more or less what you'd expect. But if I'm going to look at one, I probably would look at the iPad 11 as being the better iPad here. They also support almost the same Apple Pencils. The iPad 11 supports Apple Pencil 1 and Apple Pencil USB-C, where the 9th gen iPad only supports Apple Pencil 1. So kind of keep that in mind when it comes down to it too. Price tag wise, the iPad 11 costs $349. The iPad 9 used to cost $349, and now you can probably buy it for less than $200 in a lot of different places. And that is a very good competitive price to be able to pay for that type of iPad. Like, if I'm going to go through and pick up an iPad, I would really love to have that type of iPad with that type of capability, because that thing is going to be very solid when it comes down to that particular side. I love iPads, and that is definitely going to be an advantage, but the iPad 11 is still very well priced too. When it comes down to their cameras, these things aren't really like super insane here. They're more or less kind of the same, but the megapixel count is very different. The iPad 9 is giving you a single 8 megapixel wide angle camera with a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, where the iPad 11 is giving you a different 12 megapixel wide angle camera on the backside, but it is giving you this basically the same type of camera on the front side. But there are a couple of advantages for the iPad 11. Number one, with the iPad 11, it's giving you 4K video on the backside. You'll probably not film in 4K all that much, but it is still a really cool advantage to basically have instead of that type of iPad. So I love being able to go ahead and buy a device that's going to be giving me that type of capability, and the iPad 11 is essentially going to be giving you that. On top of that, the iPad 11 is giving you center stage on the front side as well, with it's going to be a landscape camera. They're both giving you center stage, but it is landscape this situation, which could be nicer because if you're situating it on some sort of like, keyboard or something like that, it's going to just look better. So that it would be a little bit of an advantage on something like an iPad 11 when it comes down to it as well. So that device is definitely better. I think that camera is better, and there's not really that much else to say about it. In terms of software longevity, this is also going to be something very important to keep in mind here. If you're wanting the iPad that's going to be lasting for a longer period of time, it definitely is going to be something like an iPad 11 generation. That one is going to be the one that's going to be giving you just a better experience overall, and I would probably imagine that if I'm going to go through and buy an iPad somewhere, that one is probably going to be the one that might be the better advantage here. So that's the one that I look at as being a better, just overall more thorough type of iPad. But the iPad 9 is still supported with software. I don't know how much longer that iPad's going to last, but like I said, if I'm going to recommend an iPad to people, it probably is going to be something like an iPad 11 generation, because that one is giving you a better chipset. Even from a battery life perspective, the iPad 9 gave me pretty good battery life when I was using it, but once again, the iPad 11 is definitely going to be the one that is going to be giving you better battery life. Not only is it better, like I said, in terms of battery size and everything like that, but also when it comes down to just overall capability, the iPad 11 is probably going to be the one that's going to be giving you a more optimized chipset. So I do think that is another very important thing to keep in mind there at the end of the day too. And finally, when it comes down to the performance, you're going from an Apple A13 bonnet chip inside with 4 gigabytes of RAM inside of the iPad 9 Gen, but the iPad 11 is going to be giving you the Apple A16 chip inside. The sad thing here is that neither one of these are giving you Apple Intelligence, which just shows how important Apple Intelligence is to an iPad. But also, I feel like these two iPads, the iPad 11 is definitely far faster, but the iPad 9 I feel like could also support a lot of these Apple Intelligence type of features as well. So it's kind of funny there. I will tell you from my personal opinion, both these devices are going to be giving you a very solid experience. I feel like no matter which one of these devices you buy, you're probably going to be getting a very good type of experience. They're going to both feel fairly good for the most part too, and they're both going to perform at very, very high similar levels. So I would imagine that if you're going to go through and pick up a device, you're probably overall going to be getting a pretty good experience between both in terms of speed, but clearly in my personal opinion, the iPad 11 is definitely going to be the one that's going to be giving you the way better experience here when it comes down to it. So overall, in my personal opinion, I will definitely tell you in my personal opinion, the iPad 11 is a way better device here, right? That one's going to be giving you just better experience, better capability, and that's the kind of one that I'd recommend a majority of people to go and buy. I feel like that's the one that makes the most amount of sense. I think the iPad 9 is still actually pretty decent. Like, it's not terrible. It's still a pretty workable device. But at the same time, I do think that if you are going to go through and pick up some sort of device, it does make a little bit more sense to go and buy something like an iPad 11. But you can also buy something like an M1 iPad Air 5. That iPad Air is still a very good option as well. That one's giving you a ton of capability. And that is also an iPad I'd recommend a lot of people to go and buy as well. So you can buy that one. You can buy an iPad, 10th generation too if you want a cheaper one. But those are kind of the main ones I'd kind of recommend buying in this day and age. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.